Now we're going to calculate regular pay. So regular pay means during the first 40 hours of each week. So in other words, before overtime. Okay, so now this is where students kind of get a little bit confused. So they think, well, we figured out an hourly rate for Olga, right? 26.9, and we figured out an hourly rate for Emma, 23. So let's look at Olga's hourly rate, 26.9. So let's just double check this. Let's see if we paid her exactly 26.9 for the regular hours, how much she'll get paid. So 26.9 times 2,080 hours in a year gives us 55,952. It is not correct. Okay. Remember, for these three hourly people, we've only calculated, for these three salaried people, we've only calculated the hourly rate to calculate our overtime rate. So to calculate the regular pay for these three salaried people, we have to take their regular pay and rate and figure out what it is per pay period. So to calculate Olga's regular pay for the first 40 hours, you say equals her annual rate divided by how many pay periods in a year. So we said this company is paid semi-annually, so that's, semi-monthly. So that means 24 pay periods. So how much is Olga going to get paid for working 40 hours? She's going to get paid $2,331.25 for every pay period. In other words, for 80 hours of work. Now let's double check to see if that includes extra decimals. It does not, but we still, just to be safe, we should round that. So round the formula. Okay. So now let's take this number and multiply it by 24 and see if we get 55,950. 2,331.25 times 24 pay periods gives us exactly 55,950. So we cannot calculate her regular pay by saying 2690 times 80 because this number has been rounded. So we go 26.9 times 80 hours would have given us 2152, which is not correct. So to calculate the other two salary people, their regular pay, what we're going to do is we're going to take their, notice this says per month, so we have to convert that, first of all, to an annual rate. So 4050, so equals this, times 12 gives us 48,600 per year. So to calculate her regular pay per pay period, we divide by the number of pay periods in a year, which is 24 for this company. So that gives us 2,025. And we should round that. Okay. So we could not simply have taken the 23.37 and multiplied it by 80 because that gives us 1869, which is incorrect. So Emma's regular pay, if she works 80 hours, is 2,025. So if you're worried about the 4 hours of overtime, don't worry about that. We'll do that over here. Okay, and then for Mario, we do the same method. We're going to take his his monthly rate times 12. Put that in parentheses because we want that done first. That gives us an annual rate of 46,800. Now, to calculate his regular pay per pay period divided by 24 pay periods gives him 1950, and we should round that. Open parentheses, comma, 2 digits, close parentheses, 1950. Okay. So now the nice thing about doing this payroll register with formulas, once you do one payroll register, you can just copy it for the next payroll register and just change the hours. And assuming none of the deductions change, then you don't have to redo the whole thing. Okay, and then let's calculate Lynn's regular pay. Well, notice she only works 78 hours. So we say equals 78 times her hourly rate gives us $1372.07. And we can even just copy that formula down. And then this is what our check figure should be. I'm going to write it down here, 310.27, just so when I erase this, I can see if my AutoSum is working. And I see where I made my error. My error is down here. When I did this formula, I assumed that this was going to be 80 hours or less. So I cannot, the error is in here. I cannot, for this regular pay, I cannot say equals 82 times 15.7. I have to do just, remember this is regular pay, so it's just for the first 80 hours. Equals 80 times 15.77. And now I'm getting the correct number. So you have to double check your formulas to make sure that they are accurate. Okay, and then to calculate overtime pay, we're just going to say equals, well, we don't have to calculate overtime pay for this person because she has no overtime hours. So for this person, Emma, she's got 4 hours of overtime, so equals 4 times this gives us 140.24. This person worked 5 hours. Mario equals 5 hours times his overtime rate. Lynn had no overtime hours. Catherine had no overtime hours. This person, Fuad, had 2 hours of overtime times this. And then we should double check that it equals 356.31. So I'm going to get rid of that and put in my AutoSum. Now notice it's guessing that we only want to add that number because they're not all in a row. So I'm going to add up all the numbers. There we go. And then so total gross earnings is just simply going to be regular pay plus the overtime pay. You can double click here. And then it should autofill that formula down. And I'm checking my numbers versus my solution. So what I need to do is double check that it actually adds up to that. So 10,668.58. Get rid of that formula. Do an AutoSum. And it does work correctly. Okay. So that's how you can. That's how you should fill out the payroll register recording. Of course, you can do this by hand, so you don't have to worry about these formulas. But if you want to challenge yourself to do the formulas so that you don't have to recreate the payroll register 6 times, you can use one. And if it's done correctly, you can just copy the formulas over for the next ones. So notice on these other these other columns, these are taxable amounts. So how much of this person's gross is going to be taxable for AUSTI? Well, for AUSTI, you have to check to see how much of it is under 102,000. Now, for this first paycheck, obviously, since it's their first paycheck of the year, they had 0 before. Everyone's going to be fully taxable for AUSTI. Medicare, also known as high, for our purposes, everything is taxable. And then for SUTA and FUTA, you're going to have to check to make sure people's gross earnings plus their previous earnings, the cumulative, do not go over 7,000. So you have to tax just the amount under 7,000. Okay. And then down here, we have the actual deductions. Notice it says deductions. So we're going to calculate OSTI tax here, Medicare tax here. You'll have to use the FIT lookup tables to figure out these numbers. If you're really hardcore with formulas, I could give you the electronic version of my FIT tables, and you could do a VLOOKUP. That's pretty advanced, but you could do it, and that's how I did it for my solutions. And then you calculate SIT, and then these medical, dental, 401k, child support, legal fees, those come from table 3 from this section. Okay, and then for this budgeting, notice it says budgeting of gross pay, admin, or office. What you're going to do is you're going to put their gross pay in either the admin column or office column, depending on if they are administrative right here or office workers. And then so double check that your numbers add up to my numbers that I've given you. So that's it for the payroll register. The payroll registers are where you're going to be spending a big chunk of your time of this payroll project. So make sure you get these correct. If you get these correct, then everything else flows along pretty smoothly.